guys in the dark.
14 years ago, my life was a literal nightmare. This hellscape was filled with fun things such as neglect and abuse on behalf of my mother. Suicidal thoughts that had led to attempts that would never even work. Way too many anime characters to relate to. I never felt truly loved. Even when I had a girlfriend or even a boyfriend, it didn't feel real to me. All they were was someone that wasn't my parent. Even sex at the time was just a stress reliever or an escape from my thoughts. Other than video games and anime, that was my only stress relief. Deep down, I wanted to end it every day, especially when I was around my parents. It was another where I wanted to just hang myself. My school life wasn't great either. I got into arguments that ended up into fights constantly. One day in the middle of winter, I was approached by a girl who was the most stunning thing that I had ever seen. She had ice blue eyes, blonde hair that went down to her cheeks, pale skin, a slightly too high-pitched voice, but she was beautiful nonetheless. Later I found out her name was Emma. I really didn't think anything of it at the time. I was enamored with her beauty. I wanted to be friends with her, and I was, for a little bit at least. The more that we talked, the closer we got. It got so that hearing her voice made me happy all the time. Every day that she held my hand, hers would feel soft as silk. Her hugs were warm, and for some reason, she made me feel safe. Even though I didn't tell her anything about my life, somewhere through those icy eyes, it felt like she knew what I was going through, even though there was no way that she could even understand it. As the months had passed by, it felt like I knew her inside and out. But as it turns out, I didn't really know her at all, not until it was too late for me. There were demons that had lurked just beneath her beautiful face. They started to show up more and more as time had passed by. I didn't know that entity wanted me more than I ever could have ever imagined. She started sending me letters. They seemed really sweet. They started with how much she appreciated our friendship. It would never do anything to tarnish it. I appreciated all those letters dearly, since I never really got mail. They were all really comforting to me. However, I didn't stop to think about how she got my address, let alone my apartment number. It had just flown over my head because of the comfort of having someone write to me, knowing someone out there actually cared about me. Each time I had a letter sent to me, I read it, and then I burned it immediately, just in case my folks would get into my business and try to find out about her. The letters ended up getting stranger, though. As time has passed, they went from short and sweet to obsessive and lovesick. Surprisingly, I actually remember a line from one of those letters. To my sweet wolf, I know what's going on in your life. I know more about you than you know about yourself. I know who's hurting you. I'd start hanging out in the back of the building, keep away from thugs for a little bit, but I would just sit there with my eyes closed, wandering in my own thoughts, except for the day that I had heard footsteps. They were quick ones. I opened my eyes to see her. Emma had grabbed me by the shirt, slammed me into a wall, and kissed me deeply. At the same time, I heard the switch and flick of a blade. I felt its cold steel up against my throat. Her soulless eyes had peered into mine as she had hissed, "What are you doing outside, baby? Don't you know it's dangerous out here?" I felt the cold steel press harder against my throat when I just kept stubbornly silent. "What are you doing outside?" Tears had ran down my face. I smiled, waiting for you. She had put the knife down, holding it in her right hand. She held me and told me about how she had been watching me suffer for the past 3 months, before she even had the courage to come up to me. During this talk, I had stayed silent. She sniffed at my hair, licked my neck, smelled my armpit. It felt like she was a wolf, and I was her territory. An hour had passed by, but before we could part, she had whispered in my ear, "Spit in my mouth." It was clear that I didn't get a choice in the matter. She opened up the switchblade once again, aimed it at my stomach as she had opened up her mouth. Her tongue was out and everything. I spat once, twice, then 3 times. She closed her mouth, savoring every single bit of it. She gave me a hug right after, telling me how from now on she will meet me at this very spot. We had parted ways, and I went home, ignoring the assholes in my life. I took a shower, I ate my food, and then I went to bed, just to do it all again the very next day. It was the same shit, but different day. Or so I thought, as I was walking to school. Usually I would take a bus, but I had felt like walking that day. This caused me to be late to school. And by the time I got there, Emma was waiting for me. "I knew that you'd be walking to school," she said gleefully. "I'm always watching you," she said, taking my hand. We walked inside. I won't lie, the company was really nice. But as soon as we got to her friend group, she became an entirely different person, acting like she didn't even know that I existed. I just shrugged it off, since she had always come back to me after school, seemingly drawn to my presence. "I'm sorry," she said one day, after making an act in front of all my friends. "You're not liked at all that much here. You know that, right?" Tell me something that I don't know, I thought. I didn't blame her, though. With my track record of hitting girls and boys alike, I was considered quite the violent person, though I had always had a good reason for it. Over the past couple of days, however, something had changed in her dramatically. It started as soon as I started looking for a significant other. She didn't seem to like that very much. I started to notice that a lot of girls that did like me back had stopped talking to me or even ran away from me. This happened for a good couple of weeks, until one day at my school, my name was sprayed all over the school bathroom and the walls. This had gotten me into trouble. I assured the school that it wasn't me. I may have been a bad student at the time, but I didn't do graffiti. With some luck, the principal at the time had believed me. This still made my home life an even worse living hell, even though they knew that there was no way I'd be able to afford to buy spray paint. And I was beaten because of it. This situation alone made me run away from home at least 2 hours every single time I went out. She would always find me, though. She would whisper in my ear about how much she had loved me and wanted to protect me every single time that she saw me, always with that switchblade to my throat to ensure that I didn't run away from her. I think she knew I wasn't going to run away at this point, mostly because she knew that she made me feel loved. The day I attempted suicide again, and failed, I knew that she would find me, so I just ran to her first. She would know to find me, and lo and behold, I was slammed into the wall once again. This time, the blade was pressed against my chest, as she slapped me in the face repeatedly. "No one is allowed to kill you. No one except for me. Not even yourself. I don't care what you're going through. You belong to me. Only me," she screamed into my face. "The only reason why I don't stop the abuse is that I need you to suffer. This is the only way that you can feel how much I actually love you. And trust and believe I want to stop this. But you're not 18 yet, so I can't." This had angered me so much that I shoved her away from me. I got on my knees and grabbed her hand. I begged with the knife against my throat. "Just end it. End my suffering, please. Take me away from this. I need this." She cocked her head to the side, dropped onto her knees as well, and held me close to her. She whispered a word in Japanese that I really didn't know at the time. She then pulled me in for a quick kiss, right before she began wrapping her arms around my throat, choking me. I really didn't think of her as strong, but any doubt about that was really dashed, quickly. When my entire body was shoved up against the wall, every ounce, her face was really close to mine, and continued to just look into my eyes. With every small second passed by, her grip had continued to grow tighter and tighter. When my eyes started to practically move, she would aggressively tell me, "Eyes on me! Eyes on me!" A glob of saliva had came up, and she licked it up, grinning like the cat who had just gotten the cream. At this point, I couldn't tell if she was intent on ending me or just playing with me for her own pleasures. After a few moments had passed by, she let me go so I could grasp for air, slumping in relief onto the concrete ground. She laid on the ground next to me, face to face, reaching her hand up. She caressed my face for a moment, and then she ran her fingers through my hair as she smiled. Tears were still running down her face. For a moment there was silence, some sort of peace, so to speak, in spite of what had just happened. I started crying with her when she finally spoke. "I can't kill you. I don't know what I would do without you. You might not believe it now, but you and I are the same, and you're just not there yet. I responded back, perplexed and really confused. What the hell do you mean? Damaged people like you and me all end up the same. It just takes time, but it happens, and nothing will fix you. Once again, I had shrugged it off. I wasn't understanding a damn thing. However, I did something that I never thought I would do. I pulled her in, and I held her, running my fingers through her hair, giving her a kiss on the forehead. I asked, "Do you really love me?" Her face was buried into my chest, but I heard her muffled voice say, "That's a stupid question. You know the answer." I laughed a little bit. According to my folks at home, I'm stupid, and I'll never be important to anybody. We both got up for a moment off the ground. It was getting dark, and it was about the time that we had parted ways. Before any of that had happened, however, she ended our meeting with, "It's not about being important to the world. It's about being important to one person. And to me, you are important. You're that person for me." I smiled. It quickly faded, though, as I heard gunshots in the distance. That was both of our cues to leave. Living in the ghetto is not easy. As I carefully got home, I was relatively calm for once. I didn't know why, but I wasn't going to question it. I quickly went to my room. I sat down at my computer chair. I took a deep breath, turned on my PlayStation, and decided to play video games while pondering the situation. I was trying to understand her words and what she had meant, but I quickly got distracted, thinking about the next episode of Inuyasha that was supposed to come on that very night. I stayed up watching my show. After that, I decided to turn in for bed. For some reason, I just couldn't get to sleep. I couldn't tell if it was due to the fact that I still had a bedwetting problem, and I was in fear of getting my ass beat for peeing the bed, or the insomnia that was just getting to me. Either way, it was late, and it was concerning me since I couldn't get up to drink any fluids, because I was very much restricted due to my unfortunate problem. I settled with just staying up, turning down the volume on my TV, and proceeding to play one of my favorite survival horror games, Resident Evil. About 2 hours passed by when I heard a very light knock at my window. That was not normal by any means, as in, no one was ever just knocking at my window. Of course, the normal individual would have, or would have just called for their parents, but my family life was far from normal. Instead, I took care of it myself. I looked outside, only to see in the moonlight that it was Emma. Now, obviously, my adrenaline was pumping like no other because this is my first time ever having to experience something like this. This kind of thing had never happened. I only saw this in horror movies. My breathing was erratic, but I managed to calm down slowly, taking deep breaths as I had cracked open my window, inch by inch. She was the first to speak. "Hi, baby. What are you doing? Want to come out so that we can be alone?" Now, many thoughts had ran through my head at this point. The first one being, what the hell was she doing here this late, at night, in the hood? My second thought was, is she out of her mind? My parents would kill me if they had found out. Words had finally left my mouth. Whispering, of course. I'd love to do that. It would be great. However, it would also be a bad idea. If my parents were to find out that I had left this late, the consequences would be huge. She gave me this blank look, because what you go through already isn't just as bad. Really, what do you have to lose? Your parents leave you in the same piss-soaked bed and sheets every single night. I'm surprised you're even able to breathe. It smells like ammonia so much. And before you think I'm making fun of you, I'm really not. I want what's best for you. And being here is not what's best for you. You need time away from this place. I pondered it for a moment. But before I was able to take any action, I heard one of my parents' doors click open. Quickly, I closed my curtain and acted like I was asleep. However, there was one problem. My console was still on. I got scolded for that one. It was grounded from my console. Then I got beat in the morning for it. I'm going to safely assume that she either ran off or just stayed. But with how dangerous the ghetto was in the area of the city, I'm pretty sure that she ran off. Despite having a sore ass, I got to school pretty okay. It was morning time, so everyone was hanging out with each other. I hung out with my small group of friends. Of course, I saw Emma passing me by like usual. That is, until she stopped, held my hand. My friends just looked at me, kind of shocked, as I was just pulled away. Even I was shocked for a moment, simply asking, "What are you doing?" She smiled at me. "We're together, aren't we? We can't hide it now. That would just be silly. And now we can spend more time together." Honestly, I was okay with this, because unlike the rest of my relationships that were just built around sex, this was a person who I felt really loved by. However, I did find out real quick that there were consequences by being with Emma. Apparently, there was a couple of people who really liked her, and while she paid no mind to them, most of them were boys, so I had no problem laying them the hell out. However, when it came to a friend of a friend who wanted to fight me, I had a slight problem with that, because it was simply a chain reaction. If you fight a friend of another friend, that means that you'll be fighting that other friend eventually. And these were particular chain reactions that I didn't like. But if it meant being with her, fuck it, I was in. So several fights happened. I was suspended several times, and so on and so on. However, my relationship with Emma was great. I got a lot of love that I never knew I needed, let alone wanted. Surprisingly, there was no sex in the relationship. I really didn't need it. I didn't want it, unless she wanted it, of course. And honestly, the rules were pretty simple, at least to me. Don't hang out with females that she doesn't deem worthy, at least, of hanging out with. Don't hang out with men that she doesn't deem worthy of hanging out with. And don't look at any girls or guys sexually. I followed all of those rules. I realized that I'd fallen in love with her. I really loved this girl, no matter how much I would get hurt or beaten or scolded or even yelled at. As long as I had her, I could take all of that. I was with her for 3 months. Now I'm sure you're wondering, how did this end? Unfortunately, she had gotten with my ex-boyfriend's best friend behind my back, kissed him right in front of me. I snapped, grabbed him. I shoved him against the floor, and then I beat the shit out of him. Then my eyes had turned to her, and with no hesitation or thought, just with pure rage, I grabbed her, put her up against the wall, and then I hurt her as well. I punched her several times. In the face, ribs. I even kicked her in the stomach. As I finally was able to calm down, I realized something was wrong. Not the fact that I pretty much knocked the living crap out of the girlfriend that I loved, but it was more the reaction to it all. She just looked at me with a smile. Please note, no normal person would be smiling with a busted lip, a busted nose, or possibly bruised ribs, and also getting kicked in the stomach. I screamed at her. "Why the hell did you do this? Why would you do this to me?" She just continued to smile, even as she responded. "I wanted to test your reaction. I wanted to know how you would respond. He was nothing but a pawn, and might I say, you passed with flying colors." I was confused and angry. I really didn't understand. She continued, "I know that this means the end for us, and I have no one else to blame but myself for that. But understand this, and understand this well. No matter where you go, no matter who you marry, no matter what decisions you make in this life, you'll always be part of me. You'll always think of me and belong to me, and I will always be watching you." After that, she walked away. She didn't even clean up the blood. After a week had passed, due to me being on a long suspension, I had gotten no word from her. No stalking. Nothing. I asked around, including all of my friends. They didn't know where she went. I asked the teachers and the principal. They had no idea either. A month had passed. I asked once again, this time just asking the teachers and the principal. Finally, the principal had an answer for me. She moved. As soon as I heard those words, I felt a deep, dark pit in my stomach. I was alone once again. And unfortunately, with that loneliness came nothingness. I couldn't feel anything, and I did everything that I could to feel something. But no matter what I did, no matter how messed up I was, I just couldn't feel anything. My abuse from my folks had continued all the way up until I was 18 years old. I'm 29 now, and with those 11 years, I felt a new kind of abuse that I refused to get into. But just understand that I'm right back into the pit of loneliness once again. And I can't tell if I miss her or I just miss the attention. Yeah, something is definitely wrong with me, but all I can do now is just accept it. I've been in therapy for some time, and nothing will fix me. just like she said it wouldn't. I have to continually pretend and pretend and pretend that I'm normal, but I'm not. I'm far from that. However, I can say this. I do get this feeling sometimes, like she is still watching and waiting. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.